Welcome back to the Monday Morning Point Guard podcast. On today's segment, going to be doing another rendition of the fast break. We had some big news in the league this week, and it was stuff that I really didn't want to dedicate like a full 20-minute segment to. So just going to be covering a few topics here briefly. If you do like the video, please give us a like. Also subscribe for weekly content. If there's a spot you agree with, disagree with, leave it in the comments section. We'd love to discuss it with you there. Also check us out on Spotify if you want to listen to the podcast and uninterrupted. That's the place to do it. I'm going to continue kind of breaking these breaking these apart in segments for YouTube. That way they're in more digestible chunks for that platform. So let's kick things off. James Harden. It came out this week that he is open to relocation. Kind of weird timing, in the middle of a title run, but whatever. I don't really feel like he's going anywhere, at least this year. I can't imagine they're trading him. Although in the offseason, he could be a free agent. He has a player option for $48 million. I really doubt that he's turning that down. But he also could, if he's not feeling confident in his longevity, if he opts out, he can sign like a long-term deal. I don't think he could sign the Supermax like he did in Houston. I don't think it'd be anywhere near the amount of money per year that he's currently getting. But he could sign for more years, and it would be more money in the long term if he's not feeling good about his longevity. But no one thinks more highly of James Harden than James Harden. So I imagine he's taking that player option and then kind of going from there starting next offseason. But it sounds like Philly is one of his preferred destinations, a reunion with Daryl Morey, who kind of bent over backwards for him during the Houston tenure. Just in general, though, I don't really understand what he's looking for. Playing along Kyrie in the meantime and Durant, like that seems like a really good situation for him. He's not having to carry the team like he did in Houston. He's got a lot of help here. I guess it is noteworthy that Kyrie also has a player option this offseason for $36 million. Definitely could see him opting out of that. And, it seems like the Nets are kind of not wanting to re-sign him. So it might just be Durant and Harden going forward. So maybe that's why he's considering walking. As I mentioned, nobody thinks more highly of Harden than Harden. So maybe he wants to just be the man again in Philly. He won't be the man per se, but him and Embiid kind of play very different roles in very different positions. So he could still be the guy to run the offense. So maybe we do end up getting the Ben Simmons Harden deal after all. That was discussed pretty heavily, to trade with Houston, but here we are kind of a couple of years later, and we could end up getting it with a Nets Philly swap. I still doubt Harden's going anywhere, but maybe he's just throwing that out there to make sure that they pay him what he thinks he's due. Kind of speaking of Ben Simmons, sounds like the trade rumors are really starting to heat up here towards the deadline. I'm still leaning towards nothing gets done, especially now that it sounds like Daryl Morey is trying to package Tobias Harris in any Simmons deal. That's just a tough number to get to. It's like something like $70 million that you're going to have to match to trade for those two. So, in a two-team swap, that's a really tough number for any team to get to. It's like half of their roster or four of their important players, something like that. That's really tough. Also, just in general, Daryl Morey is kind of out of his mind with what he's expecting to get for Simmons. So it was reported that he offered a trade to Golden State to get Simmons. It would be Drummond, Simmons, and Tobias Harris. The 76ers would receive Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Poole, Kuminga, and 2 firsts. Yeah, I can't imagine the Warriors were willing to discuss that at all. They probably hung up the phone before even responding. That's just a ridiculous haul. If I'm the Warriors, the Draymond and Simmons stuff on paper, like they're very similar. Obviously, you'd rather have Simmons. He's younger, just on paper. But like the intangible side of it with Draymond and the leadership that he brings to the table, like Simmons is the antithesis of that. So it's not as if that's an even swap there. And then, Wiggins has been playing at an all-star caliber level, roughly. I think it's weird that he's being considered for the all-star team, but, the fans are voting him in. Jordan Poole is a really promising young player who's, got to be up there for most improved this year. Kuminga has looked really special at time, and then 2 firsts, and you're getting, damaged goods and Ben Simmons, a big man that nobody really wants, and Andre Drummond and Tobias Harris, who is kind of just nah. I can't. I couldn't see the Golden State being even remotely interested in that. On the other side of things, the Kings offered the Sixers Buddy Hield, Tyrese Halliburton, Harrison Barnes, and 2 firsts for Simmons, Tobias, and Thibault. But Philly was reportedly not interested. It's not a terrible deal, especially given the fact that Kings picks are like gold. The Halliburton and Embiid pick and roll could be really awesome. Halliburton, really efficient shooter. So it's, he's spacing the floor for Embiid. Also, he's a really, really good passer, really special in that area. He's still, obviously, this is only his second year, so he's still got plenty of room to develop and grow. But already he shows the makings of like a really special playmaker. And, kind of when I watch the 76ers, they have a really tough time getting the ball to Embiid in his spots and really have no one to work the ball to him. He has to work really hard on offense to get the ball, or he's bringing it up the court, or he's doing some off the dribble stuff from the 3-point line. Well, he can do that. I just think it's better if you make things easier on him. Like, he should be getting deep post touches. He's unstoppable under the hoop. Like, he can make some jump shots, but I would rather him just stand under the basket and feed it to him. But they just don't have the guys who can do that effectively. So I think that's like the best deal that they probably have on the table. And, while I mentioned Morey kind of being absurd for this asking price that he has for Simmons, I sort of get why he feels that way. Like, Morey is a really calculated guy. He uses a lot of math and analytics to kind of run things. So on paper, you've got a former All-NBA guy, defensive player of the year candidate, was all defensive team last year. Like, that sounds like a really high asking price, like a King's ransom type player, no pun intended. But, he fell apart in the playoffs, and now he kind of refuses to play basketball. Our most recent memory of him is him passing up a dunk over Trae Young to avoid getting fouled. Trae Young nearly a foot shorter than him. So, putting it mildly, he's damaged goods. And that's putting aside the fact that historically he's had a lot of trouble staying healthy and staying on the court. So, all of those things combined, like, he's just damaged goods, and that's shooting aside. Like, if we're just making check marks for like things that players do, like Simmons checks a lot of boxes, but not all skills are created equally. Like rebounding, even though Simmons does that at a pretty high level, it's just not as important as shooting. Nothing is as important as shooting in today's league, even playmaking, and Simmons doesn't shoot. I just, just in general for Philly, they just need to rip the Band-Aid off here. This has been a dark cloud looming over the team's head, and it's a huge hole in the roster. I mean, this is, they're missing an All-NBA caliber player out there, and, a huge portion of their salary cap is dedicated to him, and they're just getting nothing for it right now. They need to make some type of move to get this moved in the right direction. I understand they don't want to get fleeced in some trade, but it sounds like, at least with that Kings deal, they could do a lot worse than that. Embiid, over the years has had trouble staying healthy. And, how many great years do we have left with him? This is another MVP type year for him. Like, look at Yao Ming. Like, Yao Ming was out of the league at like early 30s. Like, it came quick for him, Father Time. And it does for some of these big guys, and especially ones with the type of health issues that Embiid has had. So they've really just got to strike while the iron is hot. Don't waste another finals window with Joel Embiid. He's one of the top players in the league. And I just don't know how much longer that's going to be the case. Just, I hope we get a really long career with him. I hope he stays at a high level and can stay healthy, but I just have my doubts that that's going to be the case. And, they could do far worse than this Kings deal. A microwave off the bench and Buddy Hield, playmaking point guard and Tyrese Halliburton. He's also huge, for a point guard. And the playmaking first skill set for the point guard is kind of a dying archetype. Like, we don't, like Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, Lonzo Ball, those are LaMelo Ball. Those are really a few of the examples that we have of that. Most point guards in today's league are score first guys. So getting one of those would be really, really helpful. Also, you get a 3-and-D wing who can do a decent Tobias Harris impression. Harrison Barnes isn't as versatile offensively, but I think the loss in production there would be pretty negligible compared to Harris. Barnes also isn't a guy that you really have to run a lot of sets for, unlike Tobias Harris. And then the two first thing, like you get two Kings first round picks, like you can kind of restock the shelves of draft picks. So they've cashed a lot of those picks in to, get these assets in here. And if you do a Danny Green and Korkmaz trade this year, you can, with those first, like you can get a really good player there. You're at like 15, 16 million, with those two guys. That's a real player in the NBA, especially when you're packaging them together with two firsts. Last thing I wanted to mention, gosh, what an adventure we've gone on the last 2 weeks with Bol Bol. Who knew there could be this much excitement over a bench warmer? For the Boston fit, like with Bol Bol, like obviously, I think the meme of him is more exciting than the player. So it's really exciting, at least for Boston, to replace kind of the Taco Fall role for meme of the team. Maybe they can get some good minutes out of him. I kind of talked about him last week as kind of just being a weird player that I'm not really sure what you could do with, but he's shown some flashes of some really great stuff. But, obviously with his health issues, he should be in Detroit, but he failed the physical. Yeah, that's not really promising for a guy of his frame and stature, 7'3", $180 soaking wet. That's going to be tough to stay on the court, especially with some already pretty serious health concerns. For the Nuggets, I probably think more highly of Bryn Forbes. That's who they got in this deal than I should, but that's just because he absolutely torched the Heat last year. You can run him off some screens, and when he is hot, he is like surface of the sun level hot. But when he's cold, it's like you're living in the North Pole. Like he gets as hot as anyone, but as cold as anyone. And when you pair him with Jokic, who is probably the league's best passer for my money, this could be a really nice wrinkle for them. I could definitely see like a Bryn Forbes game in the playoffs where he's got like 27 points and 75% on 3-pointers in 15 minutes. I don't think it moves them up into like the next tier of competitiveness as far as, their playoff aspirations, but it's definitely a positive add for them. For the Spurs part of it, they get, Juancho Hernan-Gomez back in this deal. Not super exciting for them, but I mean, Bryn Forbes, I don't know. He wasn't really doing a ton for them. I mean, he was playing here and there, but not really, a key contributor for them or a big part of their plans for the future. As far as the Spurs, I mean, his name, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and the look of him, he just looks and sounds like a perfect Spurs guy. He's a fine player, but this isn't going to like get them into play-in territory, which is kind of what they're vying for right now. I don't even know that he's an upgrade on Doug McDermott. But maybe some of those Forbes minutes could go to Josh Primo, and maybe that's the plan, is you just want to get, some of those young guards some more playing time, and they're not necessarily stuck behind Bryn Forbes, who's having an okay season.